And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Tonight's weather showing a rather quiet weather pattern here for the southeast coast, Gulf of Alaska through the interior up to the Arctic coast. System pushing some rain into the southwest coast here, especially Bristol Bay, periods of rain, Alaska Peninsula, and changing to showers for the eastern Aleutians, drying out over the central Aleutians. Next system pushing rain eastward tomorrow in across Chimianatu to about Kiska, and this system pushes rain in across the southwest interior and begins to push some moisture into Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, mostly western Prince William Sound. Partly sunny over the remainder of the interior up to the Arctic coast, where it'll be mostly cloudy up there, and partly mostly sunny for the Panhandle with some isolated afternoon showers. And then this front pushes rain into the southeast coast, extending back into Prince William Sound, southeast interior areas, scattered showers, Alaska Range, and the Chugach Mountains in the afternoon here for Sunday afternoon, otherwise partly sunny. Down to Kodiak Island, dry with some sunshine there, and dry with areas of sunshine for all of the interior up to the Arctic coast. And high pressure here over the eastern Bering Sea for light winds, dry conditions there, eastern Aleutians, Pribilof Islands. Next system pushing some wind and rain into the western and then central Aleutian areas. And for the coastal water forecast for the southeast coast, along the outer coastline in the south, northwest winds tomorrow 15 knots, west at 10 to 15 knots on the central coast, light west-southwest breeze at 10 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, south winds 15 knots tomorrow, Stevens Passage and Clarence Strait, northwest winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet. And then for the day on Sunday, more wind. That system rolling in from the west. We got small craft advisories here for the south coast. Southerly winds 25 knots, even stronger winds on the central coast, southeast 30 to 35 knots. Gales from the north coast, east-southeast winds 40 knots, seas building to 10 feet there. And Lynn Canal, south winds 25 knots with higher gusts. Southeast 20, gust 35 for Stevens Passage, and south 15 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound tomorrow, variable winds at 10 knots. For the North Gulf Coast, variable winds 10 to 20 knots. Southeast winds 30 knots. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay. Otherwise, Cook Inlet, variable east winds at 10 to 15 knots. And for Sunday, Cook Inlet, north to northeast winds 15 to 20 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas here. Northwest 15 to 20 knots. Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. East winds 25 knots, so look for small craft advisory level conditions for Prince William Sound on Sunday there. And southeast 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast, western North Gulf Coast, so east winds at 20 knots. Kodiak Island, east-southeast winds 25 knots, seas 5 to 8 feet. Bristol Bay, southeast at 30. And the Alaska Peninsula, west winds 25 knots, seas 6 to 7 feet. And then for the day on Sunday, Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest winds 15 to 25 knots, southwest at 20 for Bristol Bay. West winds 25 knots blowing across Kodiak Island, seas 5 to 8 feet. Eastern Aleutians for Saturday, west-northwest winds 20 to 25 knots, northwest at about 15 for Adak and Atka, and out to the west, southeast winds 20 to 30 knots. Sunday, western Aleutians, south to southwest winds 20 to 25 knots there with seas running 6 to 9 feet. Adak and Atka, not too bad, south at 15. And south to southwest winds 15 knots there for the eastern Aleutians. For the southwest coast, east winds tomorrow 25 knots. Northeast 15 for Norton Sound, northeast 20 for St. Lawrence Island and the Pribilofs. Looking at west winds at 20 knots, northern Bering Sea here, northerlies at 20 knots. And for Sunday, light variable winds for the Pribilof Islands at about 10 knots, seas still up around 5 feet or so. Southwest at 10 for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, and north winds at 10 knots, St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast, and west or northwest breeze at 10 for Norton Sound. St. Matthew Island, north winds 15 knots. Chukchi tomorrow, Saturday, northeast winds 10 to 15 knots, east winds at 15 knots for the western Arctic coast, central coast, northeast at 15, and for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds at 10 knots. And then we've got 20-knot winds for the Arctic coast in the forecast here for Sunday, and the Chukchi Sea, north to northeast winds at about 20 knots.